Seattle woke slowly beneath a thin layer of winter rain, the kind that blurred streetlights and softened sharp edges. Inside a modest one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, Olivia Carter stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the half-empty coffee mug beside a stack of unpaid bills. The morning light brushed across her face, revealing the exhaustion she no longer bothered to hide. Ethan Miller rushed around the small kitchen, searching for his delivery scanner, a small device that had somehow disappeared overnight. His uniform jacket hung crooked on his shoulders, and his hair still smelled of the warehouse from last night's late shift. "It's on the table," Olivia said without turning, her voice flat. Ethan nodded and grabbed it. "Thanks. I'll try to be back before 9 tonight. They added more routes today." She didn't respond. He hesitated for a moment, wanting to bridge the growing distance, but Olivia's silence had begun to feel like a wall he no longer knew how to climb. He left quietly, closing the door with the same care one might use when leaving a room where someone is sleeping or grieving. When the door clicked shut, Olivia exhaled a breath she didn't realize she was holding. It had been months of this. Quiet disappointments, tired apologies, the feeling that life was slipping away from her in slow motion. She picked up her phone and opened Instagram. The first thing she saw was a friend posing beside a white Range Rover with the caption, "New wheels, new life." Another friend celebrated an engagement at a rooftop bar overlooking the city diamond ring glistening under gold lights. Olivia's thumb froze. She looked around her small apartment, peeling paint near the window, a couch bought secondhand, and a refrigerator that hummed like it was struggling for breath. She closed her eyes. This wasn't the life she imagined when she married Ethan at 25, when she was still naive, still hopeful, still believing love alone could feed both heart and stomach. At 32, love felt insufficient. Later that morning, at the marketing office where she worked as an assistant, Olivia couldn't focus. Her colleagues gathered around the break room island, laughing about vacation plans, designer handbags, new condos. She tried to smile along, but they moved in a social universe she could only orbit, never enter. "Liv, you coming with us Friday? Drinks at the Arcadia rooftop," her coworker Lindsay asked. "Maybe," she said. "You should. There's someone you need to meet," Lindsay said, with a sly lift of her brow. "A friend of my fiancé. Successful, single, the kind of guy who appreciates a woman like you." Olivia stiffened, unsure whether to laugh, dismiss, or admit how deeply the comment struck her. A woman like her, beautiful, but wasting potential, stuck in a marriage that, to others, looked like a waiting room she never walked out of. That Friday, she went. The rooftop was warm with golden lighting and soft jazz, humming beneath the chatter of wealthy 30-somethings. Seattle's skyline glittered below. Olivia felt underdressed in her simple blue dress, but Lindsay waved her over excitedly. "Olivia, this is Richard Holloway." Richard's sharp jaw, salt and pepper hair, tailored suit offered his hand. His watch gleamed, understated but unmistakably expensive. "I've heard a lot about you," he said smoothly. Olivia blinked. "All good things, I hope." "Only the best." His gaze lingered, not hungry, but assessing, as though he already imagined where she might fit in his world. Over the next hour, Richard asked about her childhood in Tacoma, her dreams before marriage, her frustrations with corporate ceilings. He seemed to understand her in ways Ethan never could, or maybe he simply knew the right questions to ask. When she left the rooftop that night, the city lights looked different, sharper, promising something she wasn't sure existed. She didn't tell Ethan she'd been out, but the cracks were widening. Weeks passed. Olivia's conversations with Richard became more frequent, first through messages, then calls, then lunches she lied about. Ethan sensed something slipping but didn't know how to stop it. He worked longer hours, hoping money would ease the tension, but his absence only sharpened the divide. One night, Olivia came home late. Ethan sat on the couch, eyes tired, hands clasped tightly. "Are you happy with me anymore?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the room like smoke. Olivia looked at the floor. "I don't know." It was the beginning of the end. The divorce happened quickly, papers signed in a courthouse hallway, tears shed silently, apologies that came too late. Ethan held the pen for a long moment before signing, as though writing the final line of a story he never wanted to end. When she walked away that day, Olivia told herself she was choosing a better future, a richer life, a life she deserved. She didn't know that life had its own price. She didn't know how deeply Ethan would break or how profoundly he would rise. And she didn't know that 1 year later, on the day she believed would mark her triumph, everything would collapse the moment Ethan walked through a pair of ornate church doors. The elevator ride up to Richard Holloway's penthouse always felt strangely weightless to Olivia, as if the building were lifting her into a world where the past no longer existed. Glass walls framed the sparkling sprawl of Seattle below, a city that looked dreamlike from 40 floors up. Yet the higher she rose, the more she felt something tightening quietly inside her chest. Richard greeted her with a warm smile as the elevator doors slid open. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, and a silver tie hung loosely around his neck. He looked like the kind of man who belonged to this world, polished, composed, carved from ambition itself. "You're late," he said lightly, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Traffic?" Olivia managed a half smile. "Work ran longer than I expected." Richard nodded, but his eyes flickered with a faint calculation she had learned to recognize. He led her into the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows swallowed the skyline. Everything in the penthouse was curated sculptures, cold marble, polished glass. Nothing accidental, nothing out of place. Unlike her old apartment with Ethan, where shoes were left by the door and plants grew unevenly toward the sun. "Sit," Richard said gently. "I'll pour you a drink." He returned with a glass of Chardonnay, placing it in her hand as he took the seat across from her. They talked about her day, his upcoming meetings, the wedding planner's newest email. Olivia answered obediently, but her mind tugged elsewhere toward a memory she didn't invite. A rainy night, Ethan coming home soaked, shoes squeaking, smiling despite exhaustion. "I brought your favorite soup. They had it on sale." She blinked the memory away. Richard leaned forward. "Olivia, are you listening?" She straightened. "Sorry, I'm just tired." His expression softened. "You carry too much on your shoulders. You don't need to anymore." He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "With me, your life will be easier. You deserve that." The words soothed her, but somewhere beneath the comfort, something tugged a thin thread of unease. It wasn't the promise of ease, but the implication that she no longer owned her choices. Later, after dinner prepared by Richard's private chef, they moved to the balcony. Wind pressed gently against her hair as she leaned against the railing. Richard wrapped an arm around her waist, but she felt oddly apart from him, as if watching herself from someone else's vantage point. "Have you chosen your bridesmaids yet?" he asked. "Almost," she lied. She hadn't asked anyone yet. The wedding was beautiful on paper floral catalogs, dress fittings, a venue overlooking the bay, but it still felt distant, like she was rehearsing a life she hadn't fully accepted. Richard slid a velvet box into her hand. "This is for you." Inside was a diamond bracelet, cold, pristine, expensive enough to numb thought. "It's beautiful," she said. "Wear it at the engagement dinner tomorrow." She nodded quietly. Richard's gifts were constant bracelets, bags, weekends away. He said they were acts of love. Sometimes they felt like anchors. When she drove home later that night, Olivia watched the city lights flash across her windshield, each one reflecting a version of her she didn't recognize. A woman ascending, a woman chosen, a woman replacing the life she once lived. She unlocked her apartment door and paused. The space felt emptier than before. Ethan's guitar no longer leaned beside the couch. His jacket wasn't draped over the dining chair. His laughter didn't fill the air when something trivial went wrong. Silence had moved in. She sat on the couch and opened her laptop. Two windows stared back at her. The wedding planning checklist, and by muscle memory, Ethan's old Instagram page. He rarely posted, mostly photos of mountains, the sky, or his dog before it passed away. But the last picture stunned her. Ethan standing beside a group of people in a warehouse wearing a black startup hoodie. He looked different, leaner, more confident, a shadow of determination sharpening his features. The caption read, "Pilot phase complete. Phase 2 begins." Dozens of comments congratulating him. Even people she remembered from their early years together, friends who once encouraged him to dream bigger. Her chest tightened. She didn't know this version of him. She wondered if he ever thought of her, if he hated her, or worse, if he didn't. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "Richard, made a reservation for tomorrow. Wear the bracelet, and don't be late this time." Her brows tensed. Just a few months ago, she would have read that as affection. Now, it felt like a line drawn in quiet warning. She typed back, "I'll be there." Then closed the window with Ethan's photo. The next evening, the engagement dinner unfolded in a private room at a waterfront restaurant. Candlelight spilled across polished wood. Servers moved like shadows. Soft jazz swirled through the room. Olivia arrived 5 minutes late. Richard's smile was pleasant, but his fingers tightened around her waist when he kissed her cheek. "Traffic?" he murmured. "Yes." The sound was soft, controlled, not forgiving. Her friends complimented her dress. People toasted to their future. Richard's arm stayed firmly around her chair, as though she might drift away if he let go. During dessert, Lindsay leaned close. "You good?" Olivia nodded, but her eyes were distant. "Just nerves," she whispered. As the dinner wrapped up, Richard excused himself to take a call. Olivia wandered toward the window overlooking Elliott Bay, the lights quivering across the water like ripples of memory. She imagined standing beside Ethan here, years ago, wrapped in a single coat because they couldn't afford 2 thick ones, laughing as the wind nearly pushed them over. She swallowed the ache rising inside her. Richard returned, his tone clipped. "We should go. Early morning tomorrow." In the car, the tension thickened. Richard tapped the steering wheel once, hard. "You need to be on time, Olivia. People watch us. They notice. They'll judge." The words were delivered calmly, almost kindly, but Olivia felt the weight of them settle over her. "I understand," she said. "Good." He reached over and squeezed her knee. "I only want the best for us." Yet in the reflection of the window, Olivia saw her own face and the unease she could no longer hide. The gilded world she had chosen glimmered around her like a cage lined in gold. And somewhere across the city, in a warehouse, lit by cold fluorescent bulbs, Ethan Miller worked late into the night, unaware that fate was quietly stitching their paths together again. In the South Industrial District of Seattle, the air smelled of steel, coffee, and the faint sweetness of cardboard. It was past 10 p.m., yet the warehouse of Miller Sink Logistics was still alive with low hums, the whirring of automated sorting belts, the clicking of scanners, the distant rumble of delivery vans being prepped for the morning routes. Ethan Miller stood on the mezzanine platform overlooking the organized chaos below. His posture was different now, straighter, more grounded. His eyes tracked the operations with focused intensity, not the old exhaustion that once weighed him down. The team gathered around him, software engineers, route managers, 2 interns half asleep on energy drinks. All right, Ethan said, tapping a digital screen that displayed the pilot data. We cut delivery time by 27% in Phase 2. If we hit 30 by next week, Harmon Capital signs the second funding round. The room stirred with a ripple of excitement. Only 1 year ago, Miller Sink had been something Ethan sketched on napkins during lunch breaks. Now, it had investors, buzz, and a future rising faster than he could have imagined. Good work tonight, he added. Go home, sleep, I'll finish the reports. The group dispersed, leaving the warehouse quieter. Ethan descended the metal stairs toward his small office, a repurposed storage room with glass walls and a view of the floor. On his desk sat the one object he hadn't replaced, a ceramic mug painted with fading blue flowers. Olivia had made it for him on their first anniversary. He didn't use it anymore, but he couldn't throw it away. He picked it up, turning it slowly between his hands. He didn't miss the arguments, the tension, the nights he came home to silence, but he missed the early years. The parts of Olivia untouched by disappointment. The girl who believed in him when no one else did. A knock on the door. Boss? It was Marcus, his operations lead. You heading out soon? Yeah, Ethan said, just finishing up. Marcus nodded, then hesitated. You got plans for the weekend? You should take a break before the next investor review. Ethan cracked a small smile. Sleep is my plan. You deserve more than sleep, Marcus said as he backed out of the room. Good night, man. When he was alone again, Ethan sat at his desk and opened a drawer he rarely touched. Inside lay a single sealed envelope creased from being carried in his backpack for months. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Olivia's, though she never wrote it, because he had written it to her. A letter she never received. He ran a thumb over the seal. The ache inside him was familiar, dulled but not forgotten. He had written it during the darkest weeks after the divorce, a confession, a goodbye, an apology wrapped into one. He once believed she ignored it on purpose. He now knew she never saw it. He discovered that truth by accident, months later, while debugging email logs with a former acquaintance who used to intern for Richard Holloway's company. A few offhand comments, a connection, a realization. Someone had intercepted the letter. Someone who didn't want Olivia to read it. He didn't know why. He didn't know who. But he had a theory. And yet, he didn't act. Not then. Maybe he wasn't ready. Tonight, though, something tugged at him, a feeling he tried to bury, but it rose anyway. He placed the letter in his jacket pocket. Across the city, in a boutique bridal studio glowing with soft amber lights, Olivia stood on a circular platform as the tailor pinned the hem of her gown. The dress was breathtaking silk that moved like water, beadwork that shimmered under even the faintest light. It was everything she once dreamed of. Yet when she looked at herself in the mirror, she felt an unexpected pang, like watching someone else wear a life she wasn't sure belonged to her. Beautiful, the stylist murmured. You'll make headlines. Olivia forced a breathy laugh. That's not the goal. Oh, but you know how people are, the stylist continued. A rich CEO marrying a woman with your looks? The photos will be everywhere. Olivia's smile faltered. That wasn't the compliment the woman thought it was. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. Richard. Sent the guest list to your email. Review by tonight. She typed back. Will do. But her fingers shook slightly. When the fitting ended, she stepped outside. The street was cold, the air sharp. Across the road, a bus rolled past line 49, the same route Ethan used to take home when they first met. She closed her eyes. Memory pressed into her. A 22-year-old Ethan, drenched from rain, still grinning as he handed her a paper bag with cheap takeout and said, I got extra soy sauce packets in case you want them. Love used to feel simple. Now it felt like a negotiation with herself. She walked to her car slowly. as though each step weighed more than the last. Saturday morning, Ethan drove toward Queen Anne for a meeting with Harmon Capital. The streets shimmered with early sunlight, and a soft mist hung over the water. As he parked near a coffee shop, he noticed a couple walking hand in hand laughing, leaning into each other. He looked away, swallowing something bitter. He wasn't lonely, not exactly, but he was unfinished. His phone buzzed. A news headline. Seattle power couple, Richard Holloway and Olivia Carter, set for grand wedding this month. A photo accompanied the article, Olivia smiling beside Richard, her hand on his chest, her eyes bright but guarded. Ethan exhaled slowly. He didn't regret letting her go. People grew apart, lives diverged, but something inside him tightened as he studied her expression. She looked happy, yet not fully. He recognized that look. He had lived with it for years. He closed the article. After the meeting, instead of driving back to the warehouse, he found himself heading towards St. Clair Cathedral, the rumored venue for Olivia's wedding. According to social media chatter, he didn't want to admit he'd read. He parked across the street, watching workers carry in decorative arches. He had no intention of approaching. He was simply confronting reality. But then, his hand brushed his jacket pocket the letter. The truth he had swallowed for months. And for the first time, he realized delivering it wasn't about winning Olivia back. It wasn't even about Richard. It was about ending a conversation with his past that had never been allowed to finish. He stepped out of the car. Fog curled around the cathedral steps as he approached, each footstep echoing faintly. He didn't know when he would give her the letter or how, but he knew he couldn't walk away again. Someone had stolen Olivia's chance to choose with the full truth. And Ethan Miller was done letting other people define the endings of his stories. Morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Richard's penthouse, slicing the room into gold and shadow. Olivia sat at the marble kitchen island, stirring her coffee long after it had cooled. Across the counter lay the wedding binder pages marked and highlighted, floral arrangements circled, seating charts annotated. It should have felt exciting. It felt like homework for a life she wasn't sure she earned. Richard walked out from the bedroom, tie already knotted, expression crisp. He kissed her cheek, the gesture precise, practiced. "You didn't review the guest list," he said. Olivia blinked. "I was tired last night. I'll look today." Richard's jaw twitched barely, but she caught it. "We're a team," he said, softer. "Details matter." "I know," she murmured. He checked his watch. "Lunch at 1. Don't forget." The door closed behind him. Silence settled thick, uneasy. She opened the binder again and tried to focus, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. Beyond the glass, the city pulsed with its own life people, hurrying, laughing, failing, rising. She wondered how many of them were living choices they didn't fully understand. Her phone buzzed. "Lindsay, Arcadia rooftop again tonight? Girls only." Lindsay, "And don't say Richard won't like it." Olivia smiled despite herself. She typed, "I'll try to come." She didn't send the message. Instead, she stood and moved toward the living room, where the city's winter light traced faint patterns on the hardwood floor. On the far wall hung a framed photograph. Richard insisted she display a photo from their first weekend trip to Napa. She remembered the winery, the air thick with the smell of oak and crushed grapes. She remembered laughing, or trying to, but the laughter in that picture looked slightly forced, like a smile held too long. She touched the frame, lightly. Her reflection overlapped with the image of who she'd been then. The Olivia beside Richard looked polished, controlled. The Olivia standing here felt divided. She closed her eyes, and Ethan's face flickered through her memory. Not the broken man from the divorce. The man from the photo she saw online standing taller, eyes sharper, surrounded by possibility. She exhaled a trembling breath. The distance between past and present was not as clean as she once believed. At Millersink, the air vibrated with a sense of momentum. Engineers moved between monitors, vans lined up outside like pieces on a chessboard ready to advance. Ethan stood in the downstairs loading bay, inspecting the new QR tracking units fresh out of their packaging. Marcus joined him, chewing the last bite of a protein bar. "You good?" Marcus asked. "You've been quiet as hell today." Ethan set a scanner aside. "Just thinking." "About the funding?" "Yeah," Ethan lied. Marcus didn't buy it. "Or about your ex-wife marrying Seattle's favorite ego in a suit?" Ethan shot him a look. Marcus raised a hand. "Hey, I'm just saying. It's all over the business pages this morning. Hard to miss." Ethan sighed and leaned against a metal crate. "I don't care who she marries." But the truth pressed deeper than he wanted to admit. It wasn't jealousy. It was the unfinished story lodged in both their chests. Marcus studied him for a moment. "You planning to show up?" Ethan hesitated. "No, I'm not trying to make this about me." Marcus nodded slowly before lowering his voice. "Then why carry that letter everywhere?" Ethan froze. Marcus lifted a shoulder. "I've seen you take it out of your pocket when you think no one's looking." Ethan didn't respond. Marcus clapped his back and headed down the corridor. "Just don't lie to yourself, man. You owe yourself better." When he was gone, Ethan pulled the letter from his jacket. The paper had softened at the folds, the ink slightly smudged from time. It felt fragile, necessary. He wasn't going to ruin Olivia's life. But he wasn't going to let her marry Richard while believing a lie created by someone else's hands. The truth mattered, even if it arrived late. That evening, Olivia finally joined Lindsay and two other friends at the Arcadia rooftop. The sky was streaked with orange and violet, and heaters glowed soft amber across the terrace. "You look tense," Lindsay said, handing her a drink. "Is Richard writing you again about the wedding?" Olivia gave a small, controlled smile. "It's just a lot." "More like he's a lot," one of the women muttered. Olivia stiffened. "He's supportive." Lindsay arched a brow. "Supportive doesn't equal controlling, Liv." Olivia set her drink down. "He's not controlling." "Isn't he?" Lindsay asked gently. "You check your phone like you're waiting to be scolded." The words hit, deeper than expected. Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed. "Richard." Her stomach tightened. "Richard, where are you?" Dinner was at 7. Olivia looked at the time, 7:12. She had forgotten. Her pulse quickened. She typed quickly, "I'm with Lindsay. I'll be home soon." Richard's reply came seconds later. "Richard, come now. No explanation. No smiley. Just an instruction." Her friends watched her expression fall. "You're leaving," Lindsay said flatly. "I have to," Olivia whispered. "Do you want this life?" her friend asked quietly. "Really?" Olivia swallowed. "He's good to me." Lindsay's voice softened. "Being taken care of isn't the same as being loved." The words stayed with Olivia as she hurried out of the rooftop lounge, her coat clutched tightly around her. Richard was already waiting when she reached the penthouse. He stood near the window, back straight, hands clasped behind him. "You're late," he said calmly. "I'm sorry." "Olivia," he interrupted softly, "when we commit to something, we honor it. People watch us. They model their respect on our discipline." She looked down. "I understand." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. His touch was gentle. His tone was not. "Good. Try harder next time." She nodded, but her breath trembled. Richard kissed her forehead and turned away. The conversation was over for him. Olivia stepped into the bathroom, closing the door slowly. She stared at her reflection. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect life. But her eyes looked hollow. She whispered to the mirror, "What am I doing?" Outside the bathroom door, Richard typed something quickly on his phone. A message sent to someone under a contact name she never noticed before. RH. Make sure the file stays buried. She can't see it before the wedding. The phone buzzed with a confirmation, and the cracks in Olivia's perfect future widened quietly, invisibly. Rain swept across Seattle in thin, restless sheets as Olivia stepped out of a town car and hurried toward her office building. She clutched her coat tighter around her, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The city felt heavier this morning, gray, damp, humming with an undercurrent she couldn't name. Inside the elevator, she pressed the button for the 12th floor and exhaled a shaky breath. She hadn't slept. Richard's reprimand from the night before looped in her mind like a stuck soundtrack. Try harder next time. People watch us. Discipline. She leaned her head against the cool metal wall. Once, those words had sounded like guidance. Now they felt like a leash. When the elevator doors opened, Olivia stepped into the open plan office where the mood was already buzzing with weekend catch-up chatter. Her coworkers were huddled around the break room counter, coffees in hand. "Liv!" Lindsay waved her over, face concerned. "How are you holding up after last night?" Olivia forced a small smile. "I'm fine." "You sure?" Lindsay lowered her voice. "You looked spooked when you left." Olivia stirred her coffee without answering. Everyone assumed she left early because of a small argument. No one saw the tightening around her ribs, the quiet fear. She changed the subject. "Busy morning?" "We're slammed," Lindsay said. "Marketing wants the Q4 deck reshuffled again." Olivia nodded and slipped into her cubicle. Her computer hummed to life, and as she sorted through emails, she noticed something unusual, a shared drive link that Richard had sent her late last night. RH shared a file with you. Premarital documentation private. Access. Restricted status. Permission. Denied. Her brows drew together. He had shared it, yet she couldn't access it. Why? She clicked again. Still locked. A flicker of unease crawled up her spine. She minimized the window, telling herself she was overthinking. But the feeling that something was being hidden, something meant for her, stayed like a shadow at the edge of her mind. Across the city, Ethan parked in front of the small cafe he used to frequent on mornings when life was simpler. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside, the smell of roasted beans and warm pastries wrapping around him like a memory. He ordered a plain black coffee and sat near the window, the envelope resting on the table in front of him. He didn't touch it, but he couldn't push it away either. He remembered writing it, every line, every breath between the words. "Olivia, I know I failed you. I know I wasn't enough, but I loved you more than I knew how to say. Before you leave for good, I want you to know the truth." He blinked hard. A barista passed by. "You okay?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "Just thinking." She smiled and moved on. Ethan picked up the letter. He had told himself the truth mattered. He believed that, but delivering it meant stepping into Olivia's new life uninvited into the gilded world she chose instead of him. Was that selfish? Was it cruel? He didn't want to disrupt her life. He didn't want to be Richard's victim in some invisible power play. He just wanted her to know the truth she had been denied. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "We need signatures for the investor review. Swing by when you can." Ethan slid the letter back into his jacket. He would decide tonight. At lunchtime, Olivia stepped out for air, unable to endure the building's recycled breath anymore. The cold hit her cheeks, crisp and biting. She walked aimlessly until she found herself in front of an old bookstore tucked between a nail salon and a Korean BBQ place. She stepped inside and inhaled the scent of paper and dust. The store was warm, dimly lit, lined with forgotten stories. A book fell slightly off a shelf as she walked by Letters Never Sent. She froze. Her pulse fluttered, strange, irrational. She opened the book. Inside were fictional letters that revealed truths too late to matter. Her chest tightened. She snapped it shut and placed it back. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She checked her phone. Still no reply to her message from last night. I'm home. Richard always responded. Always. A chill slid down her spine. She returned to the office, uneasy. When she reached her cubicle, her email pinged. RH, dinner at 8, wear the navy dress, and please don't go out with Lindsay again without telling me. No apology, no warmth, just instructions. Olivia stared at the message until the words blurred. She whispered to herself, "This isn't love." But saying it didn't make leaving feel any easier. Late afternoon, Ethan walked out of a meeting with Harmon Capital when his phone lit up with an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something nudged him to answer. "Hello?" A male voice responded. "Mr. Miller?" "Yes." "This is Aaron Grant. I used to work for Holloway Technologies. We met through a mutual friend a few months back." Ethan stiffened. "Right. Aaron, what's going on?" The man hesitated. "I shouldn't say this over the phone, but I saw something today. Something about your ex-wife." Adrenaline sparked under Ethan's skin. What kind of something? A file, hidden under Holloway Corp's internal communications. It looks like... Well, I can't confirm yet, but it seems like Richard interfered with something involving you and Olivia. A cold wave washed over Ethan. The letter, the interception, the missing link. Ethan's grip tightened around his phone. What did he block? The man exhaled shakily. "Meet me tonight. I'll show you." "Where?" "St. Clair Cathedral." Ethan's blood chilled. The wedding venue. The call ended. Ethan stood still for several seconds, the warehouse noise around him fading into a low hum. Whatever Richard Holloway hid, tonight it would come to light. For Olivia's sake. For closure's sake. For truth. At 8 sharp, Olivia emerged from the bedroom in the navy dress Richard requested. He looked her up and down with satisfaction. "Perfect," he said. But Olivia's mind was elsewhere on the file she couldn't open, the book she stumbled upon, the tightening sensation in her chest she could no longer ignore. Halfway through dinner, she asked quietly, "Richard, why can't I access the file you shared?" Richard's fork paused midair, "Because it's not finalized. But the label says premarital documentation. Shouldn't I read that?" Something cold flickered behind his eyes. "I'll show you when it's ready." "That doesn't make sense," she pressed gently. His jaw flexed. "Olivia, drop it." Her heart thudded painfully. For the first time, she saw real danger in his expression. Not anger, control. Total. And somewhere across the city, Ethan was driving towards St. Clair Cathedral with a sealed envelope in his pocket, unaware that the truth waiting inside that Gothic stone building would shatter all 3 of their lives. St. Clair Cathedral rose out of the fog like something carved from another century, its stone towers catching what little morning light broke through the Seattle clouds. Workers hurried along the steps, arms full of floral centerpieces, candles, and velvet ropes. Inside, the cavernous sanctuary echoed with preparations, ladders clanking, fabric rustling, murmured instructions. The wedding was still days away, but the rehearsal dinner was tonight, and Richard insisted everything be perfect. Perfect was the word he lived by. Perfect was the word Olivia feared. She arrived earlier than expected, walking into the grand hall with a wrap coat pulled tight around her. The air inside was cool, scented with lilies and old stone. Her heels clicked across the marble as she tried to steady her breathing. She felt watched, not by people, by expectations. A wedding planner approached her, tablet in hand. Miss Carter, good you're early. We're finalizing the aisle layout and photo cues. Mr. Holloway wants a symmetrical doubling of the floral arches. Of course, Olivia murmured, her voice thin. She followed the planner down the aisle, her hands brushing the backs of the mahogany pews. The cathedral was breathtaking vaulted ceilings, stained glass windows casting jewel-toned shadows across the floor. Yet something about the beauty felt suffocating, too heavy for a heart already divided. When they reached the altar, the planner lifted her tablet again. And Mr. Holloway also mentioned adjusting camera angles because he wants your entrance framed perfectly. Olivia tuned her out. Her gaze drifted to the enormous wooden doors at the back of the cathedral, the same doors Ethan had walked through in her imagination more times than she wanted to admit. She had no reason to expect him, no reason to want him here. But she felt something shifting inside her, like the air itself was bracing for something inevitable. The planner asked, "Miss Carter, do you agree?" Olivia blinked. "Yes, sorry, just tired." "Of course. Weddings are overwhelming." The understatement sat bitter on her tongue. Across the city, Ethan twisted his car keys between his fingers as he sat in his parked car outside the cathedral. His chest felt tight, not from nerves, but from something deeper, an urgency that pulled him forward. He wasn't going inside to fight. He wasn't here to reclaim Olivia. He was here because lies had reshaped their lives without permission, and people deserve the truth before binding themselves to forever. He could still hear Aaron's words from last night. Someone buried your letter in Holloway Corp's archives. Someone blocked her. Someone didn't want her reading it. Someone. No Richard. Ethan clenched the envelope in his hand. He had promised himself he'd let her go. He had tried. But letting her walk into a life built on manipulation wasn't letting go. It was abandoning a part of himself he wasn't ready to kill. He stepped out of the car. Fog curled around his legs as he crossed the street. The great cathedral doors loomed ahead, heavy and dark. He wasn't sure what would happen when he stepped inside. But he knew one thing. This wasn't about winning her back. It was about giving her a choice she never truly had. He pushed open the door. Light spilled over him. Inside, Olivia straightened when she heard the echo, deep, resonant, unmistakable. Footsteps. The planner looked up from her tablet. "Oh, Richard must be here early." Olivia turned toward the back of the cathedral. But it wasn't Richard. It was Ethan. For a split second, the world stilled. The lilies, the stained glass light, the murmurs of workers, everything paused, suspended in a breath that didn't release. Ethan stood framed by the cathedral entrance, fog swirling behind him. He looked impossibly different from the man she left, a steadier posture, sharper eyes, a quiet confidence woven through the tension in his jaw. His black coat hung open, revealing the simple shirt beneath. He looked like someone who had been broken and rebuilt with his own hands. Olivia felt her knees weaken. Her breath stuttered. Her heart forgot its rhythm. "Ethan?" she whispered, barely audible. He walked down the aisle slowly, not sure if he was welcome, but certain he had to continue. With each step, the air thickened, as if the cathedral itself understood the gravity of this moment. Olivia took one step toward him, then stopped. Something fragile held her in place. Why are you here?" she managed. Ethan reached the midpoint of the aisle and stopped as well. He didn't try to move closer. He held up the envelope. "Because you never got this." Her eyes widened. Confusion flickered, then something like pain. "What do you mean?" "This letter," Ethan said quietly, voice echoing softly through the vast room, "was supposed to reach you the week after the divorce. I sent it. Someone intercepted it." The planner sensed tension. She didn't belong in and slipped away. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "Intercepted? By who?" Ethan hesitated. "I didn't know until yesterday. Someone at Holloway Corp buried it in their internal system." Her pulse hammered as the pieces clicked into place. The restricted file, Richard's guarded reaction, the way he warned her off questions. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't. Richard wouldn't." Ethan didn't push. "I'm not here to accuse him. I'm here because you deserve to read this before you built a new life. You deserve the truth." He held out the letter. Olivia stared at it as if it were a living creature, fragile, powerful, dangerous. Her hands trembled. She didn't take it. "Ethan, why now?" His voice softened, steady, not pleading. "Because someone else decided for us how our story should end. That's not fair to either of us." Silence. Heavy, pressurized. Olivia felt something unravel inside her. Threads pulling loose from a tapestry she had forced herself to admire. She stepped forward. Slowly. Her fingers brushed the envelope. For a moment, she and Ethan were inches apart, breathing the same cold cathedral air, standing on the ruins of what once was. She took the letter. Their hands didn't touch, but the distance between them felt thinner than ever. Before either could say more, the cathedral doors slammed open. Richard Holloway strode inside, jaw tight, coat whipping behind him like a shadow. His eyes fell first on Olivia holding the letter, then on Ethan, standing where no ex-husband should be. And in the span of a breath, Richard's face drained of color. His knees buckled. A hollow thud echoed through the sanctuary. Richard Holloway collapsed. Right there in front of Ethan. Right in front of Olivia. And the truth, long buried, burst violently through the surface. Richard's fall echoed through the stone cathedral like something breaking something human, something constructed, something finally too heavy to stand under its own weight. For a moment, no one moved. Even the candles seemed to waver. Olivia gasped and dropped to her knees beside him. "Richard! Richard, can you hear me?" Ethan froze halfway down the aisle, not wanting to intrude, not willing to walk away. His heartbeat thudded painfully against his ribs. He knew he wasn't the cause of this collapse, but guilt threaded through him anyway, as if simply arriving had cracked open the life Olivia built. A wedding assistant bolted toward them. "Call 911!" someone shouted from the back of the hall. But before anyone could act, Richard stirred. His eyelids fluttered, his chest lifted with a ragged inhale. Olivia let out a shaky breath, part relief, part dread. Richard's gaze darted wildly until it landed on the letter in Olivia's hand. His face contorted not with confusion, but with recognition. He knew. He knew exactly what she was holding. Olivia saw it instantly. Something in her heart twisted. "Richard, what's going on?" He tried to sit up. "Put that down," he whispered hoarsely. Olivia didn't. Instead, she drew the envelope closer to her chest, as if protecting it from him. Richard's panic sharpened. "Olivia, listen." She recoiled. "Why didn't I get this? Why were you hiding it from me?" The wedding planners and workers stood frozen, unsure whether to stay or flee the intensity unraveling before them. Richard's voice cracked not with pain, but with desperation. It would have ruined everything. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. There it was, truth plain, unvarnished, ugly. Olivia's breath hitched. Ruined what exactly? Richard swallowed hard, his expression flattening into something colder. "Us? Our life? Your future?" "My future?" Her voice trembled. "Or the future you designed for me?" "It's the same thing," he snapped before catching himself. Silence fell like a guillotine. Olivia stared at him, really stared as if seeing him clearly for the first time. The controlling remarks, the locked files, the rehearsed perfection, the oversight disguised as love, and now this. "You intercepted my letter," she whispered, more to herself than to him. You prevented me from making my own choice. Richard's jaw tightened. I protected you from a mistake. Behind her, Ethan exhaled sharply. Marrying you is the mistake she needs protection from. Richard's head whipped toward him, eyes blazing. You don't get to speak. You had your chance. You wasted it. Ethan didn't flinch. That's the point. Olivia deserved to know why I failed before choosing someone else. Olivia's voice cracked. Both of you, stop. Her grip tightened around the envelope. Her hand shook so hard she nearly tore it. I can't. She swallowed the knot in her throat. I can't breathe. She rose unsteadily, backing away from both men, heels clicking unevenly across marble. The wedding planner stepped forward instinctively, but Olivia raised a trembling hand, signaling she needed space. The cathedral's vastness echoed her panic back at her. This was supposed to be simple, she whispered, but nothing was simple anymore. Not the past, not the future, not the man she thought she loved, not the man she'd left behind, not herself. Richard rose to his feet, bracing against a pew. His color was still off, but the collapse had shaken something raw inside him, exposed something he had always kept hidden. Olivia, listen to me, he said, voice steadier. That letter was emotional manipulation. He wanted you vulnerable. You were leaving him, and he panicked. Olivia shook her head slowly. You don't know what's in it. I don't need to, Richard said coldly, because it doesn't matter. The past doesn't matter. It matters to me, she whispered. Richard stepped closer. You're upset, that's fine, but you need to calm down before you make a mistake you'll regret. The phrasing, make a mistake, stabbed like ice. Ethan took a single step forward. She's not a child, Richard. Richard snapped, Don't you dare. Enough. Olivia's voice broke like a whip. The cathedral went still again. She turned slowly toward Ethan, eyes glistening with something deeper than tears. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He swallowed. I didn't want to drag you backward. I thought you were happy. A tear slipped down her cheek. I thought I was too. Richard scoffed under his breath. Olivia turned on him sharply. Did you ever love me, or did you just love owning me? Richard flinched as if struck. Everything I've done was to give you a life better than the one he could offer. You don't get to decide what's better for me, she said softly. Her words echoed through the cathedral, steady, heartbreaking, final. Richard's fist clenched at his side, his voice lowered to a dangerous whisper. If you walk away now, you throw everything away. The wedding, the future, us. Olivia stared at him for a long, painful moment. Then she looked at the letter and made a choice. She stepped backward, away from both men. I'm not marrying anyone today, or tomorrow, or next week. Her breath shook. I can't marry you, Richard, not until I understand what the truth is. Richard's face drained again, not with shock this time, but with fury. Quiet, simmering, controlled fury. Olivia, we're done here, she said, voice trembling but resolute. She turned toward Ethan, not taking his hand, not rushing into his arms, but meeting his gaze with something honest. I need time, she whispered, to read this, to think, to understand myself again. Ethan nodded. I'm not asking for anything else. She exhaled shakily, clutching the letter to her chest. Then she walked past both men, her footsteps echoing up the aisle toward the same doors Ethan entered through minutes earlier, toward air, toward confusion, toward possibility, toward truth. Richard stood rooted in place, chest heaving, eyes narrowed with something dark and wounded. Ethan remained silent, watching Olivia leave, not victorious, not hopeful, just present, a life unraveling, a lie collapsing, a truth finally stepping into light. Rain followed Olivia through the courtyard of St. Clair Cathedral, soft and cold, like the sky itself was exhaling after witnessing too much. She didn't open an umbrella. She didn't rush. She simply walked one unsteady step after another until she reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The cathedral loomed in the rearview mirror. Richard and Ethan still inside, two shadows pressed into the stained glass glow. Her hands trembled around the envelope. So small, and yet it felt heavier than her entire future. She turned it over. Her name, Olivia Miller, written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. The letters uneven, as though he'd pressed too hard on the pen, a version of him she remembered all too well. She held her breath and tore it open. The paper smelled faintly of storage and time. The ink had smudged in two places once, where a tear had fallen, once, where the page had been folded too tightly. She read, "Olivia, I know I failed you. I know I didn't give you everything you dreamed of. But before you leave, I need you to know this. You were never a burden. You were never wrong for wanting more, and I was never angry not at you, only at myself. I want your life to be easier. If that's not with me, I'll accept it. But I hope you'll remember that once, before disappointment and money and exhaustion, there was a version of us that was real, and I will always be grateful for the years you gave me. Ethan." By the time she reached the final line, tears blurred the words. She leaned back in her seat, shaking. The letter wasn't desperate, or manipulative, or designed to guilt her. It was simply honest, quiet, human. Something Richard had never allowed her to see. Something she had needed desperately at the time permission to grieve her marriage instead of running from it. She closed her eyes, the silence around her vast and raw. "Why didn't I get this?" she whispered to no one. She knew the answer, but knowing didn't heal the wound. Her phone buzzed. "Richard, do not leave. We need to talk. Come back inside." She stared at the screen, her pulse jumping painfully. She typed a reply, then erased it. Instead, she powered off the phone and set it face down on the passenger seat. A long breath escaped her. She started the car not to go home, not to go to Richard, not to go to Ethan, but somewhere she could breathe. The engine hummed, lights flickering across the wet pavement as she drove into the gray veil of morning. Inside the cathedral, Richard pressed both palms against the back of a pew, his breath still labored. He stared at the doors Olivia had disappeared through. "She's confused," he muttered. "She'll come back." Ethan didn't answer. Richard's eyes snapped toward him. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy this? To ruin the life she could have had?" Ethan shook his head gently. "I didn't come to ruin anything. I came to return something that belonged to her." "You came to take her?" Richard's voice cracked. "You think she'll choose you again? After everything?" Ethan's expression remained steady, unbearably calm. "I'm not asking her to choose me." That only enraged Richard more. "You think you're noble?" he hissed. "You think telling the truth makes you better than me? You're still a man she left." Ethan felt the words sharp, cold, but didn't flinch. "People leave when they're hurting, or scared, or confused. That doesn't make them wrong." Richard's laugh was humorless. "You sound pathetic." "Maybe," Ethan replied simply, "but I'm not lying to anyone. Not anymore." Silence expanded around them. Richard straightened, wiping his sleeve across his damp hair. His face was composed again, the public mask snapping back into place, but his eyes betrayed something fractured. "This wedding will happen," he said quietly. "She'll come back when she calms down." Ethan looked at him with something close to pity, not for the man, but for the version of love he clung to. "If you believe that, you don't know her at all." Richard's jaw flexed. "Get out," he whispered. Ethan didn't move. Olivia asked for space. "I'm giving it to her. I'm not leaving until I know she's safe." Richard's face hardened. You're trespassing on my future. Ethan sighed. Your future was built on a lie. The words hit like a hammer. Richard stepped closer. The air between them charged. Dangerous. But before he could speak, a wedding assistant rushed in breathlessly. Mr. Holloway, your mother is outside. She wants to know why the rehearsal is delayed. Richard closed his eyes, jaw clenched. When he looked up again, Ethan was already walking away quiet, steady, unafraid. Olivia didn't go home. She drove to Cary Park, overlooking the city. Couples took photos, tourists snapped panoramas, joggers passed with headphones in. Life moved around her effortlessly, oblivious to the unraveling in her chest. She sat on a bench, pulled her knees up slightly, and reread the letter. Her past was not perfect. Her marriage had broken slowly, painfully. Ethan had disappointed her. She had hurt him in return. Both had drowned in expectations neither could name at the time. But none of it had been cruel. None of it had been a lie. Her relationship with Richard, however, had been shaped like a glass sculpture, beautiful, shimmering, and dangerously sharp beneath the surface. She touched her wrist where the diamond bracelet once sat. She had left it in the penthouse bathroom last night without thinking. Now it felt symbolic, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. Her phone stayed off. Her thoughts stayed loud. When the sun dipped behind the skyline, she finally rose. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew where she wasn't going. Back to Richard. And she wasn't running toward Ethan either. She was choosing herself for the first time in years. 3 hours later, as dusk softened into night, Ethan found her at the park. He approached quietly, stopping a few feet away so she wouldn't feel cornered. She looked up, eyes red but calm. "You found me," she said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Olivia nodded slowly. "I will be." She held the letter in her hand. The rain hadn't smudged it further. She had protected it from the drizzle with her coat, unconsciously guarding it. "Ethan," she whispered, "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I stopped recognizing myself." Ethan swallowed. "I know. And I think Richard saw that version of me, the version that wanted to be chosen, the version that wanted to be good enough for someone's world." "You are always enough," Ethan said quietly. She closed her eyes, one more tear slipping free. "I don't know what my life looks like after today," she admitted. "I don't know if I'll ever feel ready to love again. I need to rebuild something inside me." Ethan nodded. "You deserve that. Take all the time you need. I'm not here to claim you." Her chest tightened with relief. He stepped back, giving her space, not possession, not expectation, not pressure, just presence. She breathed in the cool evening air. "Thank you for giving me the truth." "Thank you," Ethan replied softly, "for wanting it." They stood side by side as the city lights blinked awake below them, two people connected not by a rekindled romance, but by honesty finally delivered. No vows, no reunion, no dramatic embrace, just clarity, quiet, and the first fragile step toward healing. Olivia looked at the skyline, then at the letter once more, and for the first time in years, she felt something close to freedom